Hey everybody, Brian Bell here today with a quick thoughts video, which I rarely do on this channel, but I thought maybe we would today. And we're going to talk about Wind in Truth by Brandon Sanderson. This is a book that I just wrapped up this week. And specifically, I want to talk about why I rated this a 3-star book on Goodreads versus what I had hoped to be a 5-star read like I read when I did Warbreaker. All right. So this absolutely was a 5-star for me. And I'm notoriously stingy about 5 stars in the first place. But because Wind in Truth is book 5 in the giant epic fantasy that is the Stormlight Archive, I thought this video might make a little bit of sense to do. And we are going to keep it entirely spoiler free. Also, because I don't really do a lot of reviews on this channel, there's going to be next to no editing. We're not going to do a lot of graphics. We're not going to do a lot of special effects. I just want to look into the camera and share my thoughts as I just finished up this book this week, and I was on a live stream and I was talking a little bit about it. And I asked the BellTube community, do you guys want me to make a dedicated video on this experience? And, you know, pretty much everybody said yes. So here we go. All right, so Brandon Sanderson himself is one of my favorite fantasy authors, and that has not changed. The man has an imagination like nobody else. The creation of the Cosmere as a whole is absolute brilliance to me. His business acumen is brilliant, and I am a business person, right? So I have this respect for Brandon Sanderson on a lot of different levels. Certainly the stories that he tells are just next level, right? I love a good Brandon Sanderson story. I think the man's an amazing storyteller. Is he a 5-star novelist? I don't know, and I think we're going to get to that a little bit here today. But like I said, I'm a big fan, so I'm not coming at this like I just want to slam Sanderson. I don't. I wanted this to be a 5-star book, particularly because if you take a look, there's a lot of gray in my beard, there's some gray in my hair. I don't know if I'll be around for book 10 of the Stormlight Archive, so it's entirely possible that books 1 through 5 might be my entire experience in Stormlight. All right, let's talk about some good things first. I love the whole world of the Cosmere, right? So I love how Roshar and Scandriel and all these other planets have this interaction between them that we don't really get with a lot of other fantasy authors. The only thing for me that really comes close is Stephen King's Multiverse, where if you read The Dark Tower and you've read Salem's Lot and you've read It and you've read Insomnia, you will get pieces of all of those, other novels within the totality that is the Dark Tower series. And Brandon Sanderson does that here as well, and I'm completely here for it. I love it. There's some characters in here that I will never forget. Dalinar, my favorite character in the entire Stormlight Archive. I love Kaladin. I'm a big Jasna fan. I am a big Navani fan. I am less so of a Shallan fan, and I am sort of good for the most part on Renarin because I like his story. I like how he's, starting off just sort of overlooked and he becomes one of the most powerful people in all of Stormlight. So I really did like that arc as well. So character-wise, I think, Brandon Sanderson is quite good, and they all have a very unique voice. You know pretty much who's talking without, Kaladin said or Dalinar said. They've got a unique voice, and they've been pretty consistent throughout Stormlight. Okay, let's talk about some other things that I did like. I love the fact that Brandon Sanderson has a plan for the Cosmere, at least a good outline, right? Where he's not only talking about his next book or two, he's looking far into the future, 10 years, 15 years, because for him, that's a process that really works. And I think it works for a lot of people, right? I've seen the videos from Dragonsteel Nexus in Utah last month, and what an amazing time he put together, not only for his fans, but for all other authors to come show their books, both indie and traditionally published, and a great place for everybody to meet. That is community building at its finest, and if you know this channel at all, we are all about building community here. So hats off to Brandon Sanderson for that in and of itself. But today we are talking about this particular book, Wind in Truth, and why I think it's, for me at least, a 3-star book. We've talked about characters and that they're really good. That's a positive. We've talked about the world a little bit, and Roshar itself having a lot of different geographies and topographies, and there's places that, the Spren exist, these magical creatures, almost like in the fairy kingdom, but they're, in the physical world as well. We've talked about the Shattered Plains before on this channel, where you can really feel like you're there in those chasms, right? And the big chasm fiends. This is all great stuff to me. So why is it a 3-star book for me? And by the way, I've not watched a single review on Wind and Truth on YouTube at all, because I wanted to come at this video really with my own thoughts. If they happen to line up with another booktuber or 2 or 10, then fine. But I just wanted this to be as uninfluenced as possible. So my number one issue with this book, and it's not like the top issue, but it's the first issue that comes to mind, is just the overall length, right? We are over 1,300 pages, and that bears the question, does this book require 1,300 pages to tell the story that Brandon Sanderson set out to tell? In my opinion, no, it does not. I feel like while he has said many times he's got alpha readers and beta readers and gamma readers and all kinds of readers, that this book could have definitely benefited from an honest and an unaligned, in terms of loyalty, developmental editor to Brandon Sanderson, who's more in service of the story itself and the novel itself than in service to Brandon Sanderson, because I find it really difficult to believe that you couldn't chop out at least 200 or 300 pages out of Wind and Truth and essentially still get the same story. So length, that's a big one for me. And the length itself sort of contributes into another issue, and that's, I feel like Brandon Sanderson has become known for the very famous Sanderlanche, right? The last 20% of the book, all the events are happening, and it's just super fast paced, and boom, all the reveals are going on, and it's just magic. And that to me is okay if we're talking about a 600 or a 700 page epic fantasy book. Because by about page 450, 500 maybe, the Sanderlanche is starting to rev up, right? When we're talking about a 1,300 page book, the Sanderlanche can't even start until at the very earliest page 900-ish. Sure, he does sprinkle in some little reveals here and there throughout the first 900 pages, but the stereotypical Sanderlanche, just by its own nature, can't happen before about page 900 or 1,000, and I don't want to read 900 or 1,000 pages before we start to get to the payoff. It's a big ask, and one for me that I found kind of a lot of an ask. That's just my thought on that length piece, though. Let's move on to another issue. This one's a little bit nitpicky of an issue, but I did want to bring it up. When the pandemic hit and I had to close my business, I decided I was going to watch a couple of courses that he teaches at BYU on creative writing. And one of his most famous classes, he talks about the Sanderson's 3 laws of magic. Maybe it's called the 3 rules of magic. I don't remember. It's one of them. Anyway, I think the first one is the ability to solve a problem with magic has everything to do with the reader's understanding of how that said magic works. Now, I know I'm paraphrasing it. It's not exactly that, but you get the gist. Now, for me, he follows that rule exceptionally well in Mistborn and in Warbreaker. However, Stormlight Archive, I think, dials it down a little bit when we talk about the scale from like hard magic to soft magic. Hard magic being something like allomancy, where we know if we drink a certain metal, it's going to give us a certain power. Soft magic, way more like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. How does Gandalf do it? We don't know. It's just Gandalf, and he just does things, and it's just magic, and we don't know why. So for the most part, Sanderson is, by his own admission, a hard magic author. It's really one of his best traits. kind of suffers a little bit, though, in that first rule, because I do not believe that every reader fully understands how surges work. I think you almost have to be like a Brandon Sanderson scholar to really understand surge magic and what's the difference between a windrunner and a skybreaker and a bondsmith and all the different kind of magic factions and styles that are in this book. It's just not quite as simple as allomancy or ferrochemistry, from Mistborn as well. So I think he kind of breaks his own rule there. So that's going to suffer a little bit in the ratings for myself. And I really do think that what I'm about to share with you is probably, for me, the number one reason why this book got 3 stars versus 5, because I did give, The Way of Kings 5 stars. I did give Words of Radiance 5 stars. I loved Oathbringer. Rhythm of War, for me, probably like a lot of people, was just okay. It wasn't the best book I ever read. It wasn't the worst. It was all right. So what about this in particular kept it from that 5-star level, apart from the things that I mentioned earlier? I think it is the theme work here and how Brandon Sanderson goes about it. Now, mental health has been a theme of, the Stormlight Archive really since we started to introduce Kaladin and Shallan into the story, deeper than just kind of action heroes and main characters. So that could be, my memory doesn't really serve exactly which book. It's either in book 2 or book 3. We start to delve into mental health a little bit. We are full on there by book 4, and book 5 is really a ton of mental health issues. Now, do I mind that? It depends. Not really, because they're characters, right? And I love how the fact that Brandon Sanderson has incorporated mental health issues that all of us as readers deal with in real life. I love how he brings that into the story because it makes it a little bit more real, more, something that's relatable to us as the reader. The manner in which he does it, though, for me, is extraordinarily heavy-handed. We cannot escape the page. When Brandon Sanderson decides he wants to go into mental health, he doesn't do it with any subtlety. He doesn't do it with any nuance. He comes in with a giant sledgehammer of his truth and his thoughts on therapy and mental health and mental growth and learning about yourself and growing as a person, and he hits you over the head with that kind of thematic sledgehammer, which I don't think is required. Brandon Sanderson is a skilled author, and while many times I feel like he is extremely inconsistent, I should say he's extremely consistently inconsistent in his prose, right? So I'll read a paragraph and the first 2 lines will be prose genius. Then the next 3 lines will be prose just, I don't get it. Like one of his students wrote it. Certainly not the caliber and the quality that was in the paragraph, in the same paragraph. So we know he has it in him. He's just really inconsistent about prose, but this isn't really about prose. I think Brandon Sanderson by now is choosing to make his prose as accessible as possible. I don't know if it's a business decision to just sell as many books as possible, or I don't know if just in general, he wants everybody to understand the themes and the plot points without any subtlety or nuance. And it gets me back to that thematic sledgehammer of mental health. I almost felt like Kaladin ought to have a business card that says Kaladin, Cosmere Therapist. And that would be sort of his role in the Cosmere. I just don't think it's required. You can write, and I know Brandon Sanderson can do this, you can write aspects of mental health challenges and our wins over our own personal mental health issues. You can write about those successes without hammering the reader over the head with a thematic sledgehammer. It's just too much. And I've gone through mental health issues in my life. I know a ton of my friends on BookTube have as well. And like I said, I love the inclusion. I love the fact that he's relating to all of us. He himself has famously said he's gone through huge bouts of depression. And while on my videos, a lot of the times I'll do these one for the roads where if you're new to the channel, at the end of the episode, I'm not going to do it today, but at the end of the episode, I'll kind of give some thoughts about life that I want to share with the audience. But I don't generally hammer it in the entirety of the video. I wait till the end and then I make my point. And I think I wish that Brandon Sanderson did the same thing here. But instead, every time we deal with something about mental health or the trials and tribulations of war and the horrors of it all, there's just nothing left to nuance. And for me as a reader, I crave that. I crave the subtlety of an author's deft hands to get my mind thinking in a certain way without having to spell it out for me, just at a very basic level. And I will submit that I believe, and I have to go back and check the earlier books, but I actually believe the quality of his prose in general has declined as the Stormlight archive has gone from book 1 to book 5. Now we know his vocabulary hasn't gotten worse, so this is probably just a choice that he's made. As a matter of fact, it almost felt like at one point it was a Marvel movie when one of the Spren, shouted back, "Yeah, let's go kick some Spren ass." Right? That Marvel moment where the team's coming together and that side character, just pipes in, "We're going to kick some ass." Guys, it just didn't feel like it was needed in this book. It's epic enough as it is. And I think when you try to be all things to all people, you wind up sort of leaving back the more nuanced reader. So those are the reasons why I feel like this book is a 3 and not a 5. Now, it's not a 1. It's brilliant. To come up with the Cosmere, to come up with the concept of Spren that are in the air, that react to your emotions is fantastic, right? Anxiety Spren. When someone's feeling anxious, they get these anxiety Sprens around them. Or when they're feeling joyful, they get this very descriptive, joy feelings and Spren that jump all around. And you can see it, and it's visual and it's visceral. That to me is phenomenal. When he's talking about confusion Spren and what they look like. Guys, that's where Brandon Sanderson shines. Where it falls flat for me is the heavy-handedness in theme, the lack of consistent prose, almost the marvelification, if that's a word, marvelification, maybe, I don't know. I'm not the author, I get to make up words. But just in general, kind of a sense of, here's what I've got. I'm not going to edit down my thoughts, and you're going to read every single page the way that I intended to, and in a great big regard. I feel like that is more in service to the author than it's in service to the story. That's why it gets a 3. I hope I haven't caused you to flip a table here. I hope I haven't caused you to either dislike me or dislike the channel, but I wanted to come on here and tell you some of the things that I think are still very good about Brandon Sanderson. Some of the things that I personally admire about him. His sense of community, his sense of world building, both on Earth, as all of us as a booktube community together, and of course in these fictional worlds of the Cosmere that he has created. But also to say, with complete sincerity and honesty, where the book slipped from what I had hoped to be a 5-star down to a 3-star. If you like this video, think about hitting the like button. If you hated the video, I'm really sorry. Feel free to engage in the comments if you want, in a respectful way. I don't tolerate any meanness or cruelness to anybody in the comments here. My channel, I get to do that, right? Anyway, thanks for listening to what is maybe an overly long thoughts video in a non-spoiler free way of Wind and Truth. I will see you guys in the next video.